Hey, what's going on everybody? Thanks a ton as always for taking the time to check out this video. So when Champions of the Continent launches, it launches with 8 5-star original travelers in the game. What I've done in this video is I've created my own personal tier list on the 8 characters, why I think that some of them are stronger than others, and I'm going to go over each of their kits and explain why I put them where they put them, so that hopefully when the game launches, we can all have a better informed decision on who we may want to take the time to roll for. So up in the S tier, I've got Viola, who's the thief, and Lynette, who's the dancer. In the A tier, I've got Millard, who is the cleric, and Gilderoy, who is the merchant. In the B tier, I've got Theo, who is the apothecary, and Sophia, who is the scholar. And in the C tier, I've got Fior, who is the warrior, and Scarecrow, who is the hunter. I also want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Octopath Traveler Discord, who a member created the entire spreadsheet that I'm going to have here on the screen in a second. And down in the description, I'm going to leave a link to this spreadsheet and also a link to the Discord. I highly recommend joining if you guys are going to play the game. There's a lot of really smart, up-to-date people on the game who are in there. All right, so let's get into Viola. So I put her at the top of the list. She is probably the best debuffer that we have in the game currently, and I think for a long time to come. As you can see, she's got the single enemy attack magic down 20%. It's based on boost level, and then she can also lower their defense and magic defense. One of her passives, which is a big highlight, is debuffs inflicted by her and her allies in the same row get a 1+ turn duration. So all around, it's just awesome, and there's no one who can really compare to that in the beginning. There are plenty of 4-star debuffers that are in the game, but typically they'll only have one stat that they lower, like attack, or they only lower magic, and etc. You can also see that she's got a lot of dagger abilities that proc more than one time, so 2, 3, and 2, and that's AoE, and then she also has a 2x fire single target. So this is good because it's reducing those shield points, which is gonna lead to breaking the enemy faster and then being able to dish out damage even more. In addition to that, she has a really good attack stat. As you can see, another 4-star has 348, 353, and she's up there at 373, and she also is boosting a pretty good speed stat as well. So overall, I think that she is a really great character to start with. She's going to provide a lot of utility at the beginning of the game that maybe a lot of other 4-stars won't be able to provide, and she's only going to do really great things for your party. All right, so now let's talk about Lynette, who is the 5-star dancer at launch. So in the same way that Viola is the queen of debuffs, Lynette is the queen of buffs. So she has single ally, attack and magic up. She's got full frontal, 20% attack magic up. So not only is she just has the ability to, raise the single ally stats, she can do the full front row. And that really is the best way to buff the party. Just being able to buff everybody at once saves a lot of time. And then her 1-star passive, which is definitely to note, is upon switching rows, full frontal, 10% attack magic up for 1 turn. So basically she can have the entire party buffed pretty much at all times throughout the fight, and that is really going to come in handy as you're progressing through the story. She also has fan attacks that proc more than once, so she has a 2x skill and a 3x skill, and then she's also got 3x fire random target. So even if you're facing just one enemy, that's 3 fire attacks that are going to chip away at the shield points, and then 2x fire AoE, and then she debuffs her fire defense down, and so on. So as you can see, Lynette is also a really strong character to have at the beginning, and this is another reason why she's up at the top for the starting characters. Now for the A list, we can start with Millard, who I think is arguably the strongest healer at launch for the game. He starts off with a full front row heal. He can also full front row boost the party's magic defense. A little bit later on, he can cast regen, and he can provide a buff, although these two are single target only. And then a little bit later, he has a stronger front row heal, so he's really good at making sure that everybody's topped off with health. And his notable 1-star passive is his heals are 20% stronger, and when he's hit by an attack for his 3-star passive, he's restoring SP equal to 3% of the damage taken. So all around, a really strong character, but one thing that he struggles with is chipping away at shield points. As you can see, all of his attack are just one-time attacks, so you're going to have to use BP to just use his default staff attack if you want to chip away at the shields. So he could be better, but he is really good to start with, but there are going to be stronger 5-star clerics that are coming in the future. Alright, and then we have Gilderoy, who is the 5-star merchant at launch. So he is the ultimate tank. As you can see, he starts off with an AoE taunt. His skill progresses. This is really a strong skill. AoE taunt, and then he also boosts his defense and magic defense up. So, he can really save your party from getting hit, and he'll just take it all himself. And then also in the future of his kit as well, a self counter physical attacks buff. Having a counter chipping away at those shield points if they're weak to spears is always going to come super in handy. His 1-star passive at the start of the battle, self 20% defense up for 3 turns, so he's already rocking a really strong defense right when he starts, and then he can only build upon it as you progress with the skill boards, and he gains the skill as well. And then when in critical HP, he gains the self regen. So as you can see, he really is just the ultimate tank. He's going to come in handy with whatever fight that you're going into. His stats are really impressive. He has a really good HP stat, and his defense and his magic defense are really good when comparing it to merchants who come out in the future. I think that he does have the potential to be S tier, but I don't think that he provides all of the utility needed to be essentially like the best merchant that's going to be out there. But if I had to rate him, I would probably put him right in between S and A. All right, now B tier for the apothecaries, who that is Theo at the start of the game. So his biggest strength is that he provides really strong regen for the party. And one of the big things about this game, and just like in the console game, is regen is really important. It has that off-turn healing, and that's always needed as you're progressing through the game, especially in those long, harder boss fights. But his biggest weakness is that he is not really the best at chipping away at shield points, especially when it comes to his lightning skills. He is, in my opinion, useless when it comes to if you're going to use him for a lightning match, except for providing those regens, because all his lightning attacks are only one time. But his biggest strength is that he is a really good axe user. He doesn't have the highest attack for apothecaries, but he does provide useful ways to chip at it. And to note, his 1-star passive is he gains 1 BP at the end of each turn for the first 2 turns. And then his 3-star passive, which is Theo and his allies in the same row, get a 50% resistance to status ailments. So even though I personally am going to be starting with Theo because his sprite and apothecary is my favorite job in the series, he just isn't the best character to start with. All the other characters mentioned before him would definitely be much more useful in the long run. Alright, now Sophia, who's the 5-star scholar that you can start with at the end of the game. So essentially, she is the Ice Queen. As you can see with her skills, she's got useful ways to chip away at the shield points if they're weak to ice, and they're strong as well. She can inflict ice defense down, magic defense down. She is probably the best DPS class to start with when you start the game. Her 1-star passive, while full HP, self 50% reduced SP cost, that is always going to come in handy while she's topped off. And 3% or the 3-star passive, self 30% ice damage up. As you can see, she really is like the DPS queen, the ice queen. But why is she at the B tier? Well, she's a selfish damage dealer. She doesn't really offer anything to the party other than damage. She doesn't really have too much utility besides magic defense down and ice defense down. While her kit is extremely impressive, and again, being in B tier is definitely not a bad thing, but I think the other characters listed above can provide utility that other characters can't provide, especially 4-star characters, because as you can see, Therese is the Lightning Queen, so there's always going to be really good options for DPS in the future, where there's not always going to be the best utility at the start of the game like with Viola and Lynette. Alright, and now for the 2 lowest tiered characters who I believe start off within the game in terms of 5-star. The reason why Fior is here is because, like Sophia, she is a selfish character and doesn't really offer anything to the party. She can offer, defense down, but everything else is just herself. She has a good passive. Both of her passives are good. Starting the battle with self 20% attack up for 3 turns, and while at full HP, self 20% sword damage up. They're good passives. She's a strong character to start off with in terms of the warriors, but the only reason she's at the C tier, which again, just because it's the C tier doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think that the other 5-star travelers can offer much more, whereas there are a lot of 4-star travelers that you can start with in the game who sort of just offer the same things. And lastly, we have Scarecrow, who is the 5-star hunter that you can start with at the start of the game. Badass name, but not a very badass character. Like Fior, he's just a selfish damage dealer. His buffs really, they're only for himself. He doesn't really offer anything to the party. He can inflict bleeding down for 2 turns, which isn't bad. And he can chip away at wind weaknesses, especially if it's a single target boss or enemy. But everything else is just, I mean, it's really bad. I would say that this is probably the weakest character to start with. As you can see, there's a certain someone who comes shortly after him who is a much better choice. So I just would not waste your time on pulling for Scarecrow and building him up when there is another character coming out very, very shortly after who will do miles more than, than Scarecrow could ever do. All right, that's all I got. What'd you guys think? Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Who do you plan on starting with when you start the game? I plan on starting with Theo. He is my favorite sprite. Apothecary is my favorite job ever since the Switch version. If you plan on playing the game, feel free to subscribe and like this video. There's a lot more Champions of the Continent content coming up soon. We're only a month away, and I'll definitely still be releasing a video every week leading up to launch. And once more content starts coming, there's going to be a lot more guides, there's going to be a lot more character previews, and I can't wait to be on this journey with you all. So thanks again, and you guys take care.